wanted to talk today about finding angel investors to fund your property portfolio, because it seems to be the sort of single biggest sticking point for most property investors out in the market. Yeah, there are people investing their own money, but for those of us who aren't that fortunate to have hundreds of thousands of pounds sloshing around, we need to find other people who are going to help fund our portfolio growth in return for something. That's the bit really, the sticking point that makes a deal attractive to an investor or not. If you think about risk and reward, what's the risk that they don't ever get the money back versus the reward of how much you're paying them effectively to use their capital? So that's what we need to think about. I decided to take on an angel investor following a conversation with one of the guys from Property Hub, Rob and Rob, and frankly, they weren't really taking me seriously. For the avoidance of doubt, it wasn't actually with Rob and Rob, or Rob or Rob. It was with one of their lackeys in the office. And I basically said, I've done a BRR, it's done really well, I've made a really decent return on it. I want to scale my portfolio rapidly. I don't want to just buy one property a year, I want to buy 10 properties a year. And the guy I talked to was a bit disparaging. He kind of laughed at me down the phone. He was like, you'll have to get an angel investor then, won't you? Bye. Put the phone down. And I just thought to myself, screw you. That is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, that conversation was in October 2020. And in December 2020, I'd secured £700,000 worth of angel investment on a 10-year deal. Now, in return for a massive whack of equity in my business, they don't give away lending facilities like that for free. You've got to give them something worth having. But for me, it was worth it because I knew I could build a £5 million plus portfolio with that investment in 5 years. And I thought I'd rather have a majority shareholding in that than 100% of nothing. And people ask me, obviously, the big question is, how did you do it? How did you get so much investment from one person for so long? I think there's two things to unpack here. There's the how did you find the investor? And the answer on that one is very, very easy. I talked to everybody and anybody who would listen. And I think people really, really underestimate how many conversations you need to have. And bear in mind that all of the conversations that you have, apart from one or two, are going to result in nothing. There'll be time wasters, there'll be people who say they're interested, but then they're not, and there'll be people who maybe have got money, but then they wander off into the long grass. That you have to really, really go after it, and it takes loads of effort. It takes a lot of rejection. All the people who I thought would be like good leads in terms of being my investor, none of them came to fruition. But the investor I ended up with resulted from one of those conversations where they were like, nah, that's not going to work, but I know someone who it might. That's where it came from. So the answer is talk the hind leg off all known donkeys, and that's how you find an angel investor. The other thing to unpack in all of this is that I think the offer that I made to the investor was really compelling and quite unique in the market, in that I was offering an equity shareholding in a business that was going to own a lot of property, i.e. all the properties that we buy are owned by the limited company that the investor has a shareholding in. Ergo, I don't need to give them any financial security because they own it. They already own the business. The second thing is that they don't really have to do anything. They had to hand over the money and they have to sign mortgage documentation because they have a significant shareholding. The mortgage lenders want them on the mortgage documentation. They do have to sign personal guarantees, which they weren't overjoyed about, but I did find a way of making that more palatable. Beyond that, they get the principal back at the end of 10 years plus a small interest payment on it. But the big thing for them is they then have a serious shareholding in a serious portfolio. The bottom line in all of this for me is that it is not rocket science. And what I did isn't anything like wildly groundbreaking. Fundamentally, people who've got money want to invest it somewhere where it will make more. And people who haven't got money, like you and me, are willing to do the grunt work in return for a share of the spoils. It's all about getting that equilibrium in the offer so that everybody feels comfortable, everyone feels happy with their role and what they've got to do, and everyone feels that they're getting something out of it. If there's an imbalance in there, that's when these deals don't work. Or if the investor doesn't feel any trust in the person who's asking for the investment, then that conversation's not going to go anywhere either. That's why I bleat on about getting your face on your social media profile, because people need to know who you are. They are not going to invest if all they can see is a Canva post with some numbers on it. There's no information about you, who you are, what you do, what your background is. You've got to build that relationship with the investors. People say things like, oh, it's impossible to get an angel investor. I'm like, no, it isn't. There's an entire industry devoted to helping people invest their money in places where they're going to get a return. Wealth management, asset management, that's what it is. You're just looking for a slice of that market. And then people say things like, oh, it's impossible to find any properties that make money. No, it isn't. It's hard to find properties that make a lot of money in a very short period of time. People who talk about property as get rich quick are just talking bollocks. It's not get rich quick, it's get rich very slowly. That's why I structured a 10-year deal with my investor, because I knew that I can make that investment make money over 10 years. Would I have been so confident that I could make, 10% of that in 12 months? No, because the market, as we all know, goes up and down, and you need to be able to absorb those. And if you're trying to give somebody a financial return within 12 months, that's a really, really hard kind of promise to make. Over 10 years, it's not that hard. You don't have to try that hard to be able to do it. Final thoughts before I start banging on is that a business like this takes some commitment. It isn't something that you can just jimmy up over a weekend. It's going to take a serious amount of thought and effort and trial and error. I think the people who will be successful in this space are the ones who really, really commit to it, who set their mind to it and go, this is what I'm doing. And I think for those people, you'll get there because it's a known model, it's a known market. For those who attempt it for a few weeks or months and don't get instant success and take their ball home, of course they won't be successful. And they're the ones who'll say, oh, it's impossible, there aren't any angel investors, there aren't any properties that you can buy. It's all down to your mindset, your commitment, your willingness, your tenacity. You can learn the skills. Anyway, that's my thoughts on building a property portfolio using angel investment.